The evening air had a bite to it as Officer Tom Reynolds climbed back into his patrol car. November brought early darkness to Pine Creek, and the streetlights had already flickered on across town. His shift was supposed to end in 20 minutes, and he was already thinking about the leftover stew waiting for him at home. Just enough time to circle through the East Side neighborhoods before heading back to the station. Tom had been with the Pine Creek Police Department for 15 years now. At 43, he wasn't the youngest officer on the force anymore, but he still loved the job most days. Small-town policing suited him, mostly helping folks with minor troubles, keeping the peace, and knowing almost everyone by name. He'd grown up here, left for college and a brief stint in the Army, then returned when his dad got sick. After his father passed, Tom had stayed, finding comfort in the familiar streets and faces. The radio crackled to life. Unit 17, we have a call from 247 Maple Street, apartment 3B. Elderly caller reports concerning noises from neighboring apartment. Welfare check requested. Tom sighed and reached for the radio. Copy that. Unit 17 responding. Eat of 5 minutes. So much for getting home on time. He flipped his turn signal and headed toward Maple Street. The Parkview Apartments were a set of 4 modest 3-story buildings on the quieter side of town. Mostly older residents and a few young families who couldn't yet afford houses in the overpriced market. Tom had been there plenty of times, usually for minor complaints, wellness checks on elderly residents, or the occasional domestic disturbance. Nothing too serious ever happened at Parkview. He pulled into the parking lot, noting the faded yellow lines and the uneven pavement that had been patched too many times. The building's brick exterior looked tired under the harsh security lights, shadows gathering in the corners. As he approached the main entrance, an elderly woman with tightly curled gray hair and thick glasses opened the door before he could even reach for it. "Oh, thank goodness you're here." "Officer," she said, her thin voice wavering. "I'm Mrs. Wilson from 3A. I'm the one who called." Tom nodded politely. "Evening, ma'am. Can you tell me what's got you concerned?" Mrs. Wilson clutched her cardigan tighter around her small frame. "It's my neighbor in 3B, Mr. Chen, and his little boy. I haven't seen either of them in 3 days, which is odd because Mr. Chen always says hello when he leaves for work, but that's not why I called." She leaned in closer. "I've been hearing strange sounds. At first I thought it was the TV, but it's been going on too long. And earlier today I swore I heard a child crying." Tom felt the familiar weight of concern settle in his chest. "The little boy, how old is he?" "He's 4, I believe." "Sweet little thing. His mother passed during childbirth, and Mr. Chen has raised him alone. He's a good father. Works hard at the hospital as an orderly. Always polite, keeps to himself mostly. Has anyone else seen them recently? Maybe they went out of town?" Mrs. Wilson shook her head. "Mr. Chen always tells me when they're going away so I can collect their mail. And his car is still in the lot. The blue Honda over there." She pointed to a compact sedan parked under one of the security lights. "Something's not right, officer. I can feel it." Tom had learned long ago not to dismiss the intuitions of observant neighbors, especially elderly ones who noticed when routines changed. "I'll go check it out, ma'am." "Which way to 3B?" Mrs. Wilson led him up 2 flights of stairs, her arthritic hands gripping the railing tightly. The hallway was quiet except for the distant sound of a television from another apartment. They stopped in front of 3B, and Mrs. Wilson stood back watching anxiously as Tom knocked firmly on the door. "Police department." "Mr. Chen? Is everything all right in there?" Tom called out, listening carefully for any response. Nothing. He knocked again, louder this time. "Mr. Chen, this is Officer Reynolds. I need you to open the door, please." Tom pressed his ear against the door and heard what sounded like a television playing quietly, and then something else. A small sound, possibly a whimper. "Did you hear that?" Mrs. Wilson whispered, her eyes wide behind her glasses. Tom nodded, his training kicking in. He reached for his radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 17 at Parkview Apartments, 247 Maple Street, apartment 3B. I may have a situation requiring welfare check entry, possibly a child alone inside. Requesting backup. Copy Unit 17, backup is 20 minutes out. All other units tied up with the accident on Highway 6. 20 minutes was too long if there was a child in trouble." Tom turned to Mrs. Wilson. "Ma'am, is there a building manager with a master key?" "Yes, but he lives across town. It would take him at least half an hour to get here." She wrung her hands anxiously. Tom tried the doorknob, not expecting it to turn, but to his surprise, it did. unlocked. That wasn't a good sign. In his experience, people in this neighborhood generally kept their doors locked. "Mrs. Wilson, I need you to wait down the hall, please." His voice was firm but kind. She nodded and retreated, watching from a distance as Tom slowly pushed the door open, announcing himself again. "Police department. I'm coming in to make sure everyone's okay." The apartment was dim, lit only by the blue glow of a television in the living room. The air felt stale and slightly warm. Tom's hand hovered near his weapon out of habit, though he didn't draw it. "Mr. Chen? Anyone home?" As his eyes adjusted to the low light, Tom could make out a modest living room with a small kitchenette visible beyond it. Everything looked tidy, but something felt off. A half-empty cup of coffee sat on the counter. Mail was stacked neatly on a small table by the door, the top envelope postmarked 3 days ago. That's when he heard it again, a small sound coming from deeper in the apartment. A child's voice, soft and uncertain. "Hello? Is someone there?" Tom called out, moving carefully through the living room. "Who's that?" came the tiny reply, followed by the sound of small feet padding across carpet. A little boy appeared in the hallway, wearing pajamas with cartoon dinosaurs on them. His black hair stuck up in all directions, and his eyes were red-rimmed as if he'd been crying. He looked up at Tom, clutching a stuffed rabbit that had seen better days. "Hey there, buddy," Tom said gently, kneeling down to appear less intimidating. "I'm Officer Tom. I'm a police officer. What's your name?" "Liam," the boy said quietly. "Are you here to help my daddy?" Tom felt a chill run down his spine. "Where is your daddy, Liam?" "He's still sleeping. I can't wake him up." The boy's bottom lip trembled. "I tried and tried. I'm hungry. Can you show me where your daddy is?" Tom asked, fighting to keep his voice steady. Liam nodded and turned around, walking back down the hallway with Tom following closely behind. The boy led him to a bedroom at the end of the hall and pointed inside. "See? He won't wake up." Tom stepped into the room, and what he saw made his breath catch in his throat. A man lay on his back on the floor beside the bed, as if he had fallen or tried to get up but couldn't. His eyes were open but unseeing, fixed on the ceiling. His skin had the unmistakable gray pallor of death. Fighting back his immediate emotional response, Tom quickly checked for a pulse he knew wouldn't be there. The man's skin was cool to the touch. He had been dead for at least a day, maybe 2. Tom looked back at Liam, who stood in the doorway watching him with confused, hopeful eyes. The boy had been alone with his deceased father for what must have felt like an eternity to a 4-year-old. The thought of what this child had been through made Tom's chest tighten painfully. "Why won't Daddy get up?" Liam asked in a small voice that threatened to crack Tom's professional composure. Tom had handled death notifications many times in his career, but explaining death to a child who had been alone with his father's body broke something inside him. He swallowed hard, reaching for his radio with a hand that wasn't quite steady. "Dispatch, this is Unit 17. I need EMS at my location immediately. We have a deceased adult male, approximately 35 years old, and a child around 4 years old who needs assistance. The child has been alone with the deceased." He couldn't say more with Liam standing there watching him. The boy's pajamas looked rumpled, as if he'd been wearing them for days. Tom noticed a small step stool in the corner of the room that had been dragged next to the refrigerator. On the counter were empty cereal boxes and an open jar of peanut butter with small fingerprints visible in the contents. Liam had been trying to take care of himself. "Are you here to fix my daddy?" Liam asked, hope shining in his tired eyes. Tom felt his heart breaking. In 15 years on the force, he'd seen many difficult things, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. He gently guided Liam out of the bedroom and back to the living room away from his father's body. "Buddy, I need you to sit here with me for a minute. Some other people are coming to help us, okay?" He kept his voice soft, struggling to find the right words for a child so young. As they sat on the couch, Liam leaned against Tom's arm, exhausted and confused. The weight of the small body against him felt both fragile and immensely heavy. In that moment, Tom silently vowed that this child would not be alone anymore. Not even for a minute. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. The ambulance and backup arrived within minutes of Tom's call, their red and blue lights painting the walls of the apartment building. Paramedics confirmed what Tom already knew. Mr. Chen had been dead for approximately 48 hours. The preliminary assessment suggested a sudden heart attack, though the medical examiner would have to make the final determination. Tom sat with Liam in the living room while the professionals worked. He'd found a clean blanket and wrapped it around the boy's small shoulders. Mrs. Wilson had brought over a glass of milk and some cookies she'd baked that morning, which Liam ate hungrily. The elderly woman hovered nearby, tears welling in her eyes as she watched the child. "I should have checked sooner," she whispered to Tom. "I heard crying yesterday, but I thought maybe they were watching a sad movie." "If only I'd knocked." Tom shook his head. "You did the right thing by calling us when you did. Don't blame yourself." A social worker arrived shortly after, a kind-faced woman in her 50s named Beth. She spoke softly to Liam, explaining that he would need to go with her for tonight. The boy's eyes widened with fear and he pressed himself against Tom's side. "I want to stay with Officer Tom," Liam said, his small hand clutching Tom's uniform sleeve. Beth exchanged a glance with Tom. "I know this is scary," she told Liam, "but we need to find you a safe place to stay while we sort everything out. Officer Tom has to finish his work." Tom felt the weight of the boy's trust like a physical thing pressing on his chest. He cleared his throat. "It's okay, buddy. Beth is really nice, and she'll make sure you have a good dinner and a comfortable place to sleep tonight." "But what about Daddy?" Liam asked, his voice small. The question hung in the air. Tom had managed to avoid directly addressing what had happened, hoping the professionals would handle that conversation. But now, looking into Liam's confused eyes, he realized the boy needed some kind of answer. "Your daddy got very sick very suddenly," Tom said gently. "His body stopped working and the doctors can't fix it." "I'm so sorry, Liam." The boy's face scrunched up as he tried to process this information. "But he'll get better, right? Like when I had a cold?" Tom felt his throat tighten. He looked to Beth for help, but she nodded encouragingly, silently telling him he was doing okay. "No, buddy. When something like this happens, a person doesn't get better. Your daddy, he died. Do you know what that means?" Liam's bottom lip trembled. "Grandma died. Daddy said she went to heaven and couldn't come back." His eyes filled with tears. "Did Daddy go to heaven too?" Tom nodded, not trusting himself to speak. "But who's going to take care of me?" The question was so straightforward, so devastating in its simplicity, that Tom heard Beth stifle a small sob behind him. "Lots of people will help take care of you," Tom promised, though he had no right to make such promises. "Beth here is going to help find your family." "I don't have other family," Liam said matter-of-factly. "Just Daddy. Mommy's in heaven too." Tom looked at Beth questioningly. "We'll check the records," she said quietly. "If there are no relatives, he'll go into emergency foster care until we can find a permanent placement." The system. The words hung unspoken between them, and Tom felt a surge of protective instinct. He'd seen what happened to kids who entered the system without family to claim them. Some found loving homes quickly, but others bounced from placement to placement. Liam had already lost everything. The thought of him facing more uncertainty and disruption seemed unbearably cruel. "I'll come check on you tomorrow, okay?" Tom told Liam as Beth gently coaxed the boy toward the door. "I promise." Liam looked back at him, his eyes wide and trusting. "You promise?" "I promise," Tom repeated solemnly. After they left, Tom stayed behind to secure the apartment. The coroner had taken Mr. Chen's body, and crime scene cleaners would come tomorrow. Tom found himself standing in the kitchen, looking at the evidence of Liam's attempts to feed himself, the open cereal boxes, the peanut butter jar with tiny fingerprints, a chair dragged over to reach the sink. How terrifying it must have been for the child, unable to wake his father, growing hungrier as the hours passed. Tom thought about his own childhood, the safety and security he'd taken for granted. His parents had been far from perfect, but they'd been there. Liam had already lost his mother and now his father too. Tom's shift had ended 3 hours ago, but paperwork kept him at the station until well past midnight. When he finally got home to his small, tidy house, he couldn't sleep. He sat at his kitchen table staring at the cold stew he'd reheated but couldn't bring himself to eat. Morning came too quickly. Tom showered, dressed, and headed not to the station, but to the county's Department of Social Services. He found Beth in a cluttered office, looking tired. "Officer Reynolds," she greeted him with surprise. "I didn't expect to see you here." "I promised Liam I'd check on him," Tom said simply. "How is he?" Beth sighed, gesturing for Tom to sit. "As well as can be expected. He's staying with one of our emergency foster families, good people who take in children on short notice. He asked about you this morning." Tom nodded, feeling both touched and burdened by the boy's attachment. Any luck finding relatives? I've been digging into Mr. Chen's background all morning. It's not looking promising. His parents are both deceased. He was an only child. His wife, Liam's mother, was also an only child whose parents died years ago. There's a distant cousin in California, but preliminary contact suggests they're not in a position to take custody. The news wasn't surprising, but it still hit Tom hard. So what happens now? We'll keep looking, of course, but realistically, Liam will likely be placed for adoption. Beth rubbed her eyes tiredly. The good news is that young children like Liam often find permanent homes relatively quickly. The bad news is that the process takes time and he might move between several temporary placements before that happens. Tom leaned forward, his hands clasped tightly. Can I see him? Beth hesitated. It's not standard procedure to allow police officers to visit children in care unless it's part of an ongoing investigation. Please, Tom said, surprising himself with the intensity of his request. I promised him. Something in his voice must have convinced her. Beth nodded slowly. I'll arrange it. But I should warn you, Officer Reynolds. Getting attached to a child in Liam's situation is risky for both of you. Tom understood what she wasn't saying. He was setting himself up for heartache, and potentially making things harder for Liam too, but he couldn't shake the image of the boy's trusting face or forget the promise he'd made. The foster home was a modest ranch-style house in a quiet neighborhood. The foster mother, Mrs. Taylor, greeted Tom warmly. Liam's in the backyard, she told him. He's been very quiet this morning, poor little thing. Beth explained what happened. She led Tom through the house to the back door. He's still wearing the clothes he had on yesterday. We'll get him some new things today. Tom stepped into the sunlit backyard and spotted Liam sitting alone on a swing set, barely moving back and forth, his feet dragging in the dirt. The stuffed rabbit from his apartment was clutched tightly under his arm. When he saw Tom, his whole face transformed. Officer Tom, you came. He scrambled off the swing and ran across the yard, stopping just short of hugging Tom, suddenly shy. Tom knelt down to his level. I promised I would, didn't I? How are you doing, buddy? Liam shrugged, his earlier excitement fading. Mrs. Taylor is nice. She made pancakes shaped like Mickey Mouse. He looked down at his shoes. When can I go home? The question stabbed at Tom's heart. Liam, remember what we talked about yesterday? About your daddy? That he went to heaven like Grandma and can't come back, Liam recited dutifully. That's right. And that means you need a new home and new people to take care of you. Can't you take care of me? Liam asked, looking up with such hope that Tom felt winded by it. Tom faltered. The question caught him completely off guard. He was single, married to his job. His house had a spare bedroom that functioned as storage more than anything else. He worked long, irregular hours. He had never even considered becoming a parent. And yet, Liam, it's not that simple, he began, though part of him wondered if perhaps it could be. The boy's face fell, and he looked back down at his shoes. That's okay. Daddy said sometimes grown-ups have to do hard things. Tom felt a swell of admiration for Mr. Chen, who had clearly been raising a thoughtful, understanding child, despite his own challenges as a single father. What would Mr. Chen want for his son now? Listen, Tom said carefully. I can't make any promises about taking care of you forever, but I can promise to be your friend and to check on you while the grown-ups figure things out. Would that be okay? Liam considered this, then nodded solemnly. Will you come back tomorrow? Tom knew he was crossing a line, getting involved beyond what was professionally wise. But looking at this child, brave and alone in the world, he couldn't bring himself to pull back. I'll come back tomorrow, he confirmed. As he left the foster home, Tom's mind raced with thoughts he'd never expected to have. His carefully ordered life suddenly seemed empty in a way it hadn't before. He thought of his house with its spare room full of boxes, his quiet evenings alone, the freedom he'd always valued to come and go as he pleased. And for the first time, he wondered if freedom was really what he wanted after all. True to his word, Tom returned to visit Liam the next day and the day after that. Each visit reinforced the unexpected bond forming between them. Tom brought small gifts, a toy police car, some picture books, a new stuffed dinosaur to keep the rabbit company. More importantly, he brought consistency to a life suddenly thrown into chaos. A week passed, then two. Mr. Chen's funeral was a small, quiet affair. Tom took the day off work to accompany Liam, holding the boy's hand as he placed a drawing on his father's casket. The image showed 3 stick figures, a man, a woman, and a small child, all holding hands beneath a smiling sun. "That's Daddy and Mommy in heaven," Liam explained softly. "And that's me." The simplicity of the child's understanding of death broke Tom's heart all over again. After the funeral, Liam had to move to a different foster home. The Taylors were emergency placement only, meant for short-term stays. The new family, the Patels, were experienced foster parents with 2 other foster children and a biological son. They lived across town, making Tom's daily visits more difficult with his work schedule. But he still managed to see Liam several times a week. Tom couldn't explain, even to himself, why this particular child had gotten under his skin so completely. Maybe it was the unique circumstances of their meeting, or the look in Liam's eyes when he'd asked Tom to take care of him. Whatever the reason, Tom found himself thinking about the boy constantly, worrying about his well-being, hoping he was adjusting to his new temporary home. "You've gotten attached," Beth observed one evening when Tom stopped by the social services office to check on the progress of finding Liam a permanent placement. Tom didn't deny it. "How's it looking?" he asked instead. Beth sighed, shuffling through files on her desk. "We're still searching for any family connections, but nothing promising yet. I've got a few potential adoptive families who might be a good fit, but the process takes time. Home studies, background checks, matching considerations. How long? Best case? A few months. More realistically, 6 to 12. And that's assuming everything goes smoothly." Tom nodded, trying not to show his dismay at the thought of Liam in temporary care for up to a year. The boy had already been through enough disruption and loss. "Have you ever thought about becoming a foster parent yourself?" Beth asked suddenly, watching Tom's face carefully. The question caught him off guard. "Me? I'm single, I work crazy hours, I don't know the first thing about raising a kid." "Single people can foster and adopt," Beth pointed out. "As for the hours, we have plenty of first responders who make it work. And nobody knows what they're doing when they first become parents, biological, foster, or adoptive." Tom stared at her, unable to formulate a response. The thought had crossed his mind, of course it had, but he dismissed it as impractical, maybe even selfish. What could he offer a child? "I'm just saying you might want to think about it," Beth continued when Tom remained silent. "I've been doing this job for 27 years. I can spot a natural parent when I see one." Tom left her office that day with a packet of information about becoming a foster parent. He tossed it onto his kitchen table when he got home, telling himself he was just taking it to be polite. He wasn't seriously considering it, but that night he couldn't sleep. He kept picturing Liam in a strange bed, surrounded by well-meaning but unfamiliar people. Would the boy think Tom had abandoned him too? Would he understand why he kept moving from home to home? How much more loss could one small child endure? At 3 a.m., Tom found himself sitting at his kitchen table, reading through the foster care application packet. The requirements seemed daunting. Background checks, those would be easy enough. Home inspections, character references, training courses, financial statements. The process would take months, and there was no guarantee he'd be approved. By dawn, Tom had made his decision. He called in to take a personal day, something he rarely did, and spent the morning cleaning out his spare bedroom. Years of accumulated junk, old sports equipment, boxes of college textbooks, winter clothes he never wore, were sorted into piles for donation, storage, or trash. By afternoon, the room was empty except for a basic bed frame and mattress that had come with the house but never been used. He stood in the doorway, trying to imagine the space as a child's bedroom. It would need paint, furniture, toys, books, all the things that made a room feel like home. For the first time in years, Tom felt a sense of purpose beyond his job. It scared him, this sudden change in direction, but it also felt right in a way he couldn't explain. The next day, Tom submitted his application to become a foster parent, specifically requesting consideration for Liam. Beth warned him not to get his hopes up. "Even with an existing relationship, there's no guarantee you'll be approved for Liam specifically," she cautioned. "And the process takes time." "I understand," Tom said, though the thought of Liam being placed with another family before he could complete the process filled him with anxiety. "But I have to try." Weeks passed. Tom continued his visits with Liam, never mentioning his application to the boy. He didn't want to create expectations he might not be able to fulfill. The Patels were kind and patient, encouraging Tom's visits even when their schedule was hectic. "He lights up when you come," Mrs. Patel told Tom one evening, as they watched Liam playing with the family's dog in the backyard. "You're very good with him." "I'm trying," Tom admitted. "I've never been around kids much." Mrs. Patel smiled knowingly. "Some people are natural parents. They just need the opportunity." She paused, then added gently, "My husband and I have discussed it. We would adopt Liam ourselves if no family comes forward. But we can see the connection between you two. He needs stability, someone who knew him before all this happened, someone who knew his father." Tom was touched by her insight and generosity. "Thank you for saying that. I've actually applied to become a foster parent," he confessed, "but I don't know if I'll be approved in time." "I'll put in a good word," Mrs. Patel promised. The home inspection came next. Tom had spent weeks preparing, childproofing his house, creating a proper bedroom for Liam with colorful walls and dinosaur-themed bedding, stocking the kitchen with healthy food options, and even planting a small vegetable garden in the backyard. He'd read parenting books, joined online forums for single fathers, and completed every required training course with full attention. The social worker who conducted the inspection, not Beth, but a younger woman with a clipboard and a serious expression, seemed impressed despite herself. "You've clearly put a lot of thought into this," she commented, making notes as she examined the safety latches on the cabinets. "I want to do this right," Tom said simply. "Most prospective foster parents don't go to quite this level of preparation before approval," she observed. "You must really want this particular placement." "I do," Tom admitted. "Liam deserves stability and love. I want to give him both." The social worker's expression softened slightly. "Well, you've passed the home inspection with flying colors. There are still more steps in the process, but you're on the right track." More weeks passed. Background checks, reference checks, financial reviews. Tom's colleagues at the police department were surprised by his sudden interest in fostering, but supportive. His captain rearranged his schedule to give him more regular hours, and fellow officers offered hand-me-down toys and children's furniture from their own kids. Throughout it all, Tom continued his visits with Liam, watching as the boy slowly adjusted to life with the Patels. Liam asked about his daddy less frequently now, though he still carried the stuffed rabbit everywhere, the last gift his father had given him. The child was resilient in that wonderful way that children often are, finding moments of joy even amidst grief. 3 months after Mr. Chen's death, Tom received the call he'd been both hoping for and dreading. Beth's voice was warm as she delivered the news. "You've been approved as a foster parent, Tom. Congratulations." He sat down heavily in his kitchen chair. "And Liam? The placement committee has approved your request. You've been matched with Liam as his foster parent, with potential for adoption if no family comes forward in the next 6 months." Tom closed his eyes, overwhelmed with relief. "When?" "We can begin transition visits this weekend. If all goes well, Liam could move in with you in 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Tom looked around his house, their house now. "In just 14 days, he would become responsible for a small human being." The enormity of it hit him all at once. Was he really ready for this? Then he thought of Liam's face when he'd first found him, alone and confused in that apartment. He thought of the boy's resilience, his gentle spirit, his trust, and he knew with absolute certainty that he was ready to try. "This weekend," Tom repeated. "I'll be ready." After hanging up, Tom walked into the bedroom he'd prepared for Liam. The dinosaur sheets were crisp and new, the nightlight plugged in, the bookshelf filled with stories waiting to be read. On the bed sat the stuffed police dog Tom had bought weeks ago, hoping it might one day welcome Liam home. Home. Such a simple word for such a complicated concept. Tom had lived in this house for years, but it had never truly felt like home until now, until he had someone to share it with. The transition visits went better than Tom could have hoped. The first weekend, he picked Liam up from the Patel's home for just a few hours. They went to the park, had ice cream, and spent time in what would soon be Liam's new bedroom, arranging toys and books exactly how the boy wanted them. "Do I get to stay here forever?" Liam asked as they sat on the floor, building with colorful blocks Tom had purchased. Tom chose his words carefully. The plan is for you to live with me for a long time, buddy. But there's something called fostering, which means I'll be taking care of you while some grown-ups make sure everything is working out well for both of us." Liam considered this, his small face serious. "And then what happens? And then if everything goes well and if you're happy here, there's something called adoption. That would mean you'd stay with me permanently and I'd be like your new dad." Tom's heart raced as he said these words. He'd never imagined himself as anyone's father. Yet here he was, hoping desperately for that very thing. Liam was quiet for a long moment, stacking one block on top of another with careful precision. "Would my real dad be mad if you became my new dad?" The question caught Tom off guard. He'd expected questions about rules and routines, not this deep concern about loyalty to a father who was gone. Once again, he was struck by the thoughtfulness of this small child. "No, buddy, I don't think he'd be mad at all," Tom said gently. "From everything I've learned about your dad, he loved you very much and would want you to be safe and happy. Sometimes when people can't be here anymore, other people step in to help. I think your dad would be glad you're not alone." Liam nodded, seemingly satisfied with this answer. "Can I still keep my picture of him?" "Of course you can," Tom assured him quickly. "And we can put it in a special frame right next to your bed so you can see it every day. We'll always remember him." The next weekend visit lasted longer, an overnight stay. Tom had worried about bedtime. Whether Liam would feel scared in the new house, whether he'd know what to do if the boy woke up crying in the night. But after their bedtime story, Liam simply clutched his stuffed rabbit, asked for the nightlight to be turned on, and fell asleep with surprising ease. It was Tom who lay awake that night, listening for any sound from the other room, his mind racing with all the ways his life was about to change, all the responsibilities he was taking on. But underneath the anxiety was a steadily growing certainty that this was right. The third weekend was the final transition visit, a full 2 days and nights before the official placement. They settled into a rhythm surprisingly quickly. Breakfast together at the small kitchen table, walks around the neighborhood where Tom introduced Liam to friendly neighbors, quiet afternoons reading or playing games. Tom had taken cooking classes specifically to prepare for Liam's arrival, and he felt ridiculously proud when the boy asked for seconds of the spaghetti he'd made. "You're really good at being a grown-up," Liam told him seriously as Tom tucked him in on Sunday night. "Better than Mrs. Taylor or the Patels," Tom chuckled. "The Patels are excellent grown-ups, buddy. They took very good care of you." "Yeah, but they have other kids too. You only have me." Liam's observation was matter-of-fact but profound in its simplicity. The following Friday was moving day. Tom took the entire day off work, cleaning the already spotless house one more time, double-checking that he had everything on the list Beth had provided. Liam's favorite foods, the nightlight, the proper children's medicine in case of fever or upset stomach, the right-sized pull-ups for nighttime just in case. When he arrived at the Patel's house, Liam was waiting on the front step with his small suitcase and backpack, the stuffed rabbit tucked under his arm. Mrs. Patel stood behind him, smiling through tears. "We're going to miss you so much, little one," she said, kneeling to hug Liam goodbye. "But we're so happy for you, and you can visit us any time." The drive home, their home now, was quiet. Tom kept glancing in the rearview mirror at Liam, who stared out the window with an expression that was hard to read. Was he sad? Scared? Excited? At 5 years old, he might not even know himself. "You okay back there, buddy?" Tom asked. Liam nodded. "I'm okay. Are we going home now?" "Home." The word sounded perfect coming from the boy. "Yes, we're going home." The first week as Liam's foster parent was a crash course in childcare. Despite all his preparation and research, Tom found himself constantly surprised by the realities of raising a child. He'd forgotten to buy children's toothpaste, hadn't realized how early kids wake up on weekends, and was completely unprepared for the amount of laundry one small person could generate. His colleagues teased him good-naturedly about his new, exhausted look. "Welcome to parenthood," his captain laughed when Tom yawned through morning briefing. "It gets easier. Sort of. But for all the challenges, there were moments of pure joy that made everything worthwhile. Liam's delight when they planted vegetables in the garden together. His proud smile when he learned to tie his shoes after 3 days of determined practice. The way he insisted on helping make breakfast each morning. Carefully placing bread in the toaster and waiting with wide-eyed concentration for it to pop up. A month into the placement, Beth came for her scheduled home visit, watching with approval as Liam showed her his room and chatted happily about his new school and the friends he was making. He's adjusting remarkably well, she told Tom while Liam was occupied, with his toys in the other room. Better than I expected, honestly. Children who've experienced trauma often struggle more with transitions, but he seems to feel secure here. Tom nodded, feeling a surge of pride. We're figuring it out together. He still has nightmares sometimes, and he asks about his dad at least once a day, but that seems normal, right? Absolutely normal, Beth assured him. You're doing everything right, Tom. The consistent routine, the open communication about his father, the stability, it's exactly what he needs. As Beth was preparing to leave, she hesitated at the door. There's something else I should mention. We've finally tracked down a relative of Mr. Chen's, a cousin in Vancouver who didn't know about Liam until recently. Tom felt his chest tighten, and she's not in a position to take custody. She's elderly and poor health, but she did send this. Beth handed Tom a small worn photo album, family photos going back several generations. She thought Liam might want them someday to know his history. Tom took the album, relief washing over him. Thank you. This will mean a lot to him when he's older. That night after Liam was asleep, Tom sat on the couch and carefully looked through the album. Faded photographs showed Mr. Chen as a young boy with his parents, as a teenager, as a young man at his wedding. There were only a few pictures of Liam as a baby with both his parents, taken before his mother passed away. Tom studied the face of the man he'd found that day in the apartment, younger, smiling, full of life and hope. The man who had raised Liam alone for 4 years, who by all accounts had been a loving, devoted father. I'll take good care of him, Tom whispered to the photograph. I promise. The following months brought new routines, new challenges, and new joys. Tom adjusted his work schedule to match Liam's school hours as much as possible, finding a reliable after-school program for the days when he couldn't be there. His house transformed gradually from a bachelor's space to a proper home. Artwork on the refrigerator, small shoes by the door, toys that seemed to multiply no matter how many storage bins he bought. There were hard days too, days when Liam acted out, testing boundaries to see if Tom would still want him if he misbehaved. Days when Tom doubted his abilities as a parent, wondering if he was making the right decisions. The first time Liam called him Daddy by accident, then burst into tears, sobbing that he'd forgotten his real daddy's face. That day had nearly broken Tom's heart all over again. But there were more good days than bad. The day Liam's teacher called to say he'd finally participated in class discussion after months of silence. The Saturday morning when Tom woke to find Liam had climbed into his bed sometime in the night and was sleeping peacefully beside him, one small hand resting on Tom's arm, as if to make sure he was still there. The evening they sat on the back porch watching fireflies, and Liam leaned against Tom's side and whispered, I'm glad you found me. 6 months after Liam's placement, Beth called with the news they'd been waiting for. No blood relatives have come forward for custody, and the court is satisfied that all reasonable efforts have been made to find them. You can proceed with the adoption if you still want to. If I still want to? Tom repeated, almost laughing at the absurdity of the question. In 6 short months, Liam had become the center of his world. The thought of life without the boy was unimaginable now. That night at dinner, Tom broached the subject carefully. Liam, remember how we talked about fostering an adoption? Liam nodded, mouthful of macaroni and cheese. Well, the grown-ups who make these decisions have said that if we both want it, I can adopt you. That would mean you'd stay with me permanently, and legally I'd be your dad. Would you like that? Liam put down his fork, his face suddenly serious. Would I have to call you Dad? Tom shook his head quickly. No, buddy. You can call me Tom forever if that feels right to you. Whatever you're comfortable with, Liam thought for a moment, then asked, would I still be a Chen? Tom hadn't expected this question. Well, usually when someone is adopted, they take the new parent's last name. But we could keep Chen as your middle name if you want, so you'd be Liam Chen Reynolds. Would that be okay? Liam nodded slowly, then more confidently. Yeah, because I'm still part of my first daddy's family, but now I'm part of your family too. Exactly, Tom said, his throat tight with emotion. So what do you think? Should we become a forever family? Liam's answer was to slide off his chair and come around the table to throw his arms around Tom's neck in a fierce hug. Yes, please, he whispered. Forever family. The adoption process moved forward with surprising speed. Beth had warned them it could take months, even years. But something about their case, perhaps the unique circumstances of their meeting, or the obvious bond that had formed between them, seemed to smooth the path. By early spring, nearly 8 months after Tom had first entered that apartment and found a terrified little boy, they had a court date. What happens at court? Liam asked as Tom helped him with the buttons on his new dress shirt the morning of their hearing. Do I have to talk to the judge? The judge might ask you a few questions, Tom explained, straightening the boy's collar. But nothing scary, I promise. She just wants to make sure you're happy about the adoption. I am happy, Liam said with the straightforward certainty that children often possess. Are you happy too? Tom felt his throat tighten with emotion. Happier than I've ever been, buddy. The courthouse was intimidating even to Tom, who had testified in countless cases over his years on the police force. The grand building with its marble floors and high ceilings seemed to swallow them up as they walked hand in hand through the security checkpoint. Beth met them in the hallway outside the courtroom, dressed more formally than Tom had ever seen her. You both look very handsome, she told them with a warm smile. Are you ready? Liam nodded solemnly, gripping Tom's hand tighter. They had practiced what would happen today, role-playing the judge's questions, but Tom could feel the child's nervousness in the clamminess of his small palm. It's going to be great, Tom assured him, giving his hand a gentle squeeze. And afterward, we're having that ice cream celebration we talked about, remember? The courtroom was less intimidating than Tom had feared. Their hearing was scheduled during the morning's family court session, which had a warmer, less formal atmosphere than criminal proceedings. Several other families waited on benches, some with balloons or flowers, all dressed in their best clothes and wearing expressions that mixed anxiety with excitement. When their names were called, Tom and Liam approached the bench with Beth. The judge, an older woman with kind eyes behind stylish glasses, smiled at them. So, this is the famous Officer Reynolds and Liam, she said. I've read your file with great interest. Quite an unusual beginning to your story. Tom nodded. Yes, Your Honor. Not the way most families start out. Indeed. But sometimes the most meaningful connections come from unexpected places. The judge looked down at Liam. Young man, I have a few questions for you. Is that okay? Liam nodded, his expression serious. Yes, ma'am. Do you understand what adoption means? Liam straightened his shoulders slightly. It means Officer Tom will be my dad forever, and nobody can take me away from him. And I'll be a Reynolds, but also still a Chen because that was my first daddy's name. The judge smiled. That's exactly right. And is that what you want? Yes, ma'am, Liam said without hesitation. We're already a forever family. We just need the paper that says it's real. A few chuckles rippled through the courtroom at the child's straightforward assessment of the legal process. The judge's smile widened. Well put, young man. She turned her attention to Tom. And you, Officer Reynolds, this is a significant life change, taking on the responsibility of raising a child, especially as a single parent. Are you fully committed to this adoption? Tom looked down at Liam, then back at the judge. Your Honor, the day I walked into that apartment and found this boy was the most important day of my life, though I didn't know it then. Everything since has only confirmed what I think I knew instinctively even in that first moment, that Liam and I were meant to be family. Yes, I am fully committed not just for today but for the rest of our lives. The judge nodded, seeming satisfied. She reviewed the papers before her for a moment, then looked up with a smile. Having reviewed all the documentation and heard from both parties, I find this adoption to be in the best interest of the child. The petition for adoption is hereby granted. She struck her gavel lightly on the bench, then her formal demeanor softened. Congratulations to both of you. May your family be blessed with love and joy. The small crowd in the courtroom, mostly other families waiting their turn and a few of Tom's colleagues who had come to support them, broke into applause. Liam looked up at Tom with wide eyes. That's it? It's official? Tom nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. He knelt down and opened his arms, and Liam flung himself into the embrace. They stayed that way for a long moment, holding on to each other as the reality of what had just happened washed over them both. I have something for you, Tom said when he finally trusted his voice again. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. This is for you to remember today. Liam opened the box carefully. Inside was a simple silver chain with 2 pendants, a small police badge and a puzzle piece. The badge is because I'm a police officer, and that's how we found each other, Tom explained. And the puzzle piece is because even though we didn't know it, we were both missing a piece of our family until we met. Liam ran his finger over the pendants, his expression thoughtful. Can I wear it now? Of course. Tom fastened the chain around the boy's neck, noting how grown up he suddenly looked in his dress clothes and new necklace. When had that happened? In the months they'd been together, Liam had grown taller, his baby face thinning slightly into that of a young boy. He'd also grown more confident, more talkative, more secure. The frightened child Tom had found that day was still there. But he was healing, growing, thriving, as promised. They went for ice cream after the hearing, joined by Beth, Tom's captain, and several officers from the precinct who had supported them throughout the process. Liam soaked up the attention happily, proudly telling everyone about the judge and showing off his new necklace. You know, Captain Davis said quietly to Tom as they watched Liam chatting with one of the officers, when you first told me you were going to foster that boy, I thought you were crazy. A confirmed bachelor like you, married to the job for all these years. I didn't think you'd last a month, Tom chuckled. Honestly, sometimes I didn't think I would either. But look at you now. The captain clapped him on the shoulder. I've never seen you happier. Fatherhood suits you, Reynolds. Fatherhood. The word still felt new, weighty with responsibility but also with joy. Tom watched as Liam laughed at something Beth said. Ice cream smeared around his mouth despite the napkin tucked into his collar. His son. Officially, legally, forever his son. Later that evening, after the celebrations were over and they were back home, Tom helped Liam get ready for bed. As he tucked the blankets around the boy, Liam reached up and touched the silver chain around his neck, which Tom had said he could keep on for the night. Tom, he asked sleepily, is it okay if I call you Dad now? Since it's official? Tom swallowed hard, fighting back sudden tears. Yes, buddy. That would be very okay. Good. Because I've been practicing. Liam yawned. Good night, Dad. Good night, son. Tom whispered, the word feeling perfect on his lips. He kissed the boy's forehead and turned on the nightlight before quietly leaving the room. In the living room, Tom sank onto the couch, emotionally exhausted but content in a way he'd never experienced before. On the mantel above the fireplace, he'd placed 2 photographs side by side in matching frames. The first showed Mr. Chen holding a newborn Liam, his face glowing with pride and love. The second was a picture taken at the park a few weeks ago, Tom pushing Liam on a swing, both of them laughing. 2 fathers, 1 boy, an unconventional family formed through tragedy and chance, but a true family nonetheless. Tom's phone buzzed with a text. It was from Mrs. Wilson, the elderly neighbor who had made the call that fateful evening. She had moved to a retirement community shortly after Mr. Chen's death but stayed in touch, always asking about Liam. Saw the news about the adoption on Facebook, her message read. So happy for you both. God works in mysterious ways. Tom smiled as he typed his reply. Yes, he does. 10 months ago, he'd been a lonely bachelor, set in his ways, convinced his life would continue on its predictable path until retirement. Then a routine call at the end of a shift had changed everything. He'd walked into that apartment expecting to find a routine situation, a misunderstanding, perhaps or at worst a minor domestic issue. Instead, he'd found his son. Tom looked around the living room, taking in the subtle changes that marked Liam's presence in his life. The toy box in the corner, the child-sized sneakers by the door, the refrigerator artwork visible from where he sat. His orderly bachelor existence had given way to something messier, louder, more challenging, and infinitely more rewarding. Tomorrow would bring new adventures. Liam had a soccer game in the morning, his first, and he was both excited and nervous. Tom had promised to help him practice before breakfast. There were permission slips to sign for a school field trip, groceries to buy, laundry to fold. The ordinary business of family life that now filled his days.